Hello and welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, your daily guide to decoding current affairs the smart way for UPSC. It's September 18th, 2025 and today's edition features two important deep dive articles for Mains 2026. Firstly, we'll be exploring about the textile industry in India, its challenges, opportunities and the role in exports and jobs. And next, we'll be looking into the topic of disaster management in the Himalayan region, a pressing issue of climate change, fragile ecology, and technology-driven solutions. In our simplified sections, we'll be looking into articles which are extremely crucial for your upcoming prelims 2026 examination. So let's begin. Hi guys, I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back again to another important session of the Analyst today. Today we'll be starting with India's textile industry and a detailed overview of the facts, issues, challenges and also the important government schemes. We'll be starting actually with a very important government scheme which our Prime Minister recently announced as of yesterday, which is by the name of PM Mitra Park, which is a mega textile park where it actually tries to promote the textiles on a global level. Now, he has inaugurated a textile park at Dhar at Madhya Pradesh, and this will be looking into the various aspects of the textile industry in the country, and more so in recent times, as you know, due to the issues with reference to the tariffs with the United States that we are having as a country. Our Prime Minister is also encouraging us to actually buy local and also encourage the use of Swadeshi products. Right? It feels like we are actually going back to our modern history times. Now, this is extremely important when we talk about the topic of GS3, Indian economy. And here, we are also looking at so many important schemes and developments from prelims perspective too. Firstly, let us start with the very topic of the day. That is, we are starting with by knowing what exactly is PM Mitra Park. Now, this is actually based on the 5F formula, which is very important for your mains answer writing too. Now, this 5F is standing for farm to fiber to factory to fashion to foreign. Now, if you can understand through this picture, we have so many greenfield and brownfield which are actually standing for the new textile parks which are built from the ground up, and the brownfield are the one which were already existing and now new renovations are actually fitted into those parks. Now, what are these parks doing at all? They're actually talking about bringing the cotton, the yarn, the wool, the silk directly from the farm. They're converting it to fiber. They're converting the same at factories, and also from fiber they're manufacturing clothes. Then they're also designing the same and they're also exporting the same, all at these particular parks. So you can actually think of these parks as integrated one-stop points for textile hubs and textile export destinations, where you can understand the main infrastructure that we have here are actually modern factories, plug and play facilities. That means these are the various machines, the equipments which are extremely easy to install and also to repair, right? Where surrounding these parks we have reliable power, water and other utility services also. So it is actually a whole of government approach when it comes to promoting textile by giving all of the important features at one place itself, right? So around India we have around right now 7 PM Mitra parks, where around we have 4,500 crores of budget over the 5 years. We are actually trying to transform it to a world-class industrial hub for textile, and at the end of the day we will also generate around 7 lakh direct and 14 lakh indirect employment. So if you can see, a lot of investment, a lot of jobs will be created. Along with, we also are focusing not only on the physical infrastructure part, we are also talking about the social infrastructure of the needs of the factory workers at the textile factories here. So we will be looking at hostels, childcare facilities, canteens, recreational areas. When we talk about the logistics, when we talk actually about how these exports will be done, how the fabric from these parks will be transported through the various domestic markets. We are also looking at warehousing, logistics parks, ports, airports, highway connectivity, everything will be done. Also, the support infrastructure. I mean, when you are actually operating a textile factory, you not only need those machines which are needed for that factory, also you need various other aspects too, such as you need common effluent treatment plants, because you know the textile sector, not only in India but in the entire world, is actually producing a lot of pollutants. So we are actually also treating the pollutant at these treatment plants. We also have testing labs. We have R&D centers. If you are actually a fan of the Shark Tank program on Sony Live, you actually know how, even within the textile industry, we have to do R&D to actually look into the various ongoing trends and the designs on social media, or say the type of fabric that you are using, the quality of the material, everything matters, right? So this is why the developmental capital support as a part of this program for greenfield parks, for those parks which are totally new, will be given to the tune of 30% of the project cost, and the cap will be at 500 crores. So anyone who is setting up a new park, if you can actually take 30% of the project cost from the government up to the amount of 500 crores. For brownfield, it is 30% up to 200 crores. And also, they will be getting manufacturing incentive support apart from developmental capital support, which is the very first capital that is needed. Apart from this, if you actually want to run your daily operations, you need around 3% of the annual turnover for the first 3 years. So you will also be getting the subsidy based on that. Now, this is the scheme that we have discussed, which was in the news. Now, let us actually look into the background of the textile sector. When we actually talk about the textile sector, the global standing is 6th, right? And also when we talk about the contribution to our Indian GDP, alone itself is contributing 2%, around more than 10%, to be precise 13% of the total industrial production. Correct. Also, it is projected to reach around $350 billion by 2030. This is very evident. Even on the social media, we are seeing so many influencers starting their own brands. We have so many Gen Z, millennial brands which are coming up. So this is actually supposed to actually burst in the near future, with huge amount of potential. Also, if you can understand, we earn a lot of export currency. Around 12% of India's total export is fueled by textile. We earned around 2.8 lakh crore in 2023-24. When it comes to employment, we are giving around 45 million direct jobs from the textile sector, which is actually second largest in the country, just after agriculture. So you can actually understand the high amount of, unskilled labor which are also operating here. This means we also have a large amount of MSME, the micro, small, medium enterprises which are also operating here. Also, we can understand this is actually a large form of an informal sector too, which is actually a challenge that we have to address by formalizing it and bringing the workers under so many government schemes and incentives. Also, when we talk about the MSME dominance, just we have talked about it, it is around 80% of the capacity of the textile sector. Also, when we talk about the market size, it is around $174 billion, as we have known just now. It is slated to become $350 billion by 2030 in the next 5 years only, right? It will be almost doubling. Also, when we talk about the export share, it is 12%. Now, when we talk about the structure of the sector, or say how the sector of the textile actually looks like, we know that we are actually using these kind of raw materials such as cotton, silk, jute, handicrafts, wool, and also something which we know as technical textiles. So when we talk about the same, when we talk about the cotton sector, we actually grow all the 4 species of cotton in India, and we know that around 9 states in the country are actually major cotton producers, not only in India but for the rest of the world too. We are actually second in the entire world, right? So that is why we have a very big hub. Also, when we talk about the technical textiles, these are the new type of textile which are suitable for some specific purposes, such as sports textiles, such as industrial textiles, such as even automobile textiles. These are actually textiles which are in growing demand right now. Also, India is the 5th largest producer on this. When we talk about silk, India is the 2nd largest producer of silk. In the comments, tell me who is the 1st largest. Also, we grow these varieties of silk which are actually one of the rarities in the entire world. And actually, we are trying to produce, a significant part of the silk, products in the entire world. Also, when we talk about jute, the eastern India, that is West Bengal, Orissa, also some of the northeastern states, right, they are actually accounting for around 75% of the world's production of jute, right? So you can understand such amount of huge potential we have, right? Also, this can lead to so many jobs and employment opportunities for the northeastern states of the country. Next, we are also having handicrafts across Varanasi, Bhagalpur, and so many other major clusters, where we are also transporting and exporting it to around 100 countries. When we are talking about wool, India is actually the 9th largest producer, right? Also, when we talk about the value of textile and apparel sector, that is also increasing over a period of time. That means the textile sector in the country is actually performing well. But we have to understand one thing, that over the last year, we have actually understood that the textile import has actually decreased, right? Also, when we talk about one important PYQ from 2020, this is how UPSC will be asking you questions typically if you look at statement number 2. If you know the answer, you let me know in the comments below, right? Now, when we talk about the key government schemes here, firstly, we have to talk about Technology Upgradation Fund Scheme, which is actually the main fund that the government will be giving you in the form of capital subsidy. That means if you are actually constructing one textile factory, you will be getting the subsidy based on the capital that you need to set up that. Okay, now we also have Samarth scheme, a very important one, which is actually a scheme which is looking into placing you in some textile MSMEs or big companies by giving you skill, and this is actually under the Skill India campaign too. Also, we have the National Technical Textile Mission. If you can understand, this was launched during 2021 financial year, and it is actually having 4 components: research and development, market development, export promotion, education, skill development. Because you know, the technical textiles are in high demand right now. We are actually seeing the huge growth of the aviation sector, transportation sector, the various other sectors of fashion, of sports, of so many other things which actually need dedicated textile for that. If you can just imagine one thing, right? Imagine Virat Kohli wearing that Indian t-shirt, right? Indian team t-shirt, jersey. So that is not the material that I'm wearing right now, right? That is actually suitable for a person who is perspirating, the sweating, and is actually in the sports mode. So for them, we need technical textiles, and India is actually, if you can understand, the 5th largest producer in the entire world of this. That is why we have a mission for that also. Okay, and also we have the PLI scheme. No one can ignore this PLI scheme, which is a production linked incentive on the incremental sales of the various textile companies, and the government will be giving around 11% incentive to the new entrants in this particular sector, right? And this is just to create world-class facilities and to attract foreign direct investment in this particular sector. Now, when we look at various other schemes which are actually oriented towards promoting trade and export of the textile, firstly we have the ROSCTL scheme, which is actually a scheme which is trying to give you the discount on the amount of central and the state taxes that you have paid on the export of some substance. Now, for example, say you are exporting some garment to US, and the state government and the central government levy some amount of charges. So these kind of charges are increasing your price of the product. Now the government of India always wants you to increase your exports, because more exports means you are increasing your income. When you are increasing your income, you are spending in the market. It is good for the market, good for the country. That is why the government always wants to give you always some good amount of incentives to boost your exports, right? So this is one of that. Next, we are also having free trade agreement with countries such as UAE, Australia, which are actually very big major markets. Also, recently, as you have understood, that we recently had the India-UK FTA, which will be opening the doors with reference to Bhagalpur silk from Bihar, Baluchari sari from Murshidabad, also Bandhani from Gujarat, and so many other specialized textiles in the country, right? Also, we are in talks with the EU. As of now, if you have read the newspaper today, the European Union has also enhanced the trade status with India, so it will be benefiting the textile sector of the country too. Next, India also promotes the various BSI standards, right, with reference to quality control order, which is nothing, just you have to understand that with reference to any textile or any product whatsoever, if you want to export that, we have to understand that the quality must be of the highest one. Okay, so that is why this quality control order, specifically if you want to export to EU, the US, that is a done deal. Also, when we talk about the Export Promotion Council, this is actually looking into the various potential markets, the advertisements, the branding, the marketing of the textile startups and the companies which are looking to tap into the global markets. Also, if you can see, the FDI in the entire textile sector, while it has actually come down from around the highs of 2015, 16, 17, 18, right? So from 2018 onwards, we have seen a little rise again during the COVID pandemic. It decreased, and right now again it is increasing. right? So this is how the FDI is also being attracted in the country. And at the end of the day, we have so many other incentives such as expo and the trade fairs which are being held, which is showcasing India's value chain in the textile sector. In your handout, I have given you this link towards this PIB article. Please do read it. It is extremely important for your preparation, especially when we talk about the various promotion and the schemes that the government has given with reference to cotton, wool and say silk and the various other kinds of sectors that we have seen in the textile industry. So it is an extremely important one. But right now guys, we have to look also at some challenges. Firstly, we have actually right now been losing so many markets of ours to competitors such as Bangladesh and Vietnam. Why? Because our textile sector is stagnating, right? It is not increasing over a period of time. And also the exports are declining in recent times, because recently we have also seen that the global growth with reference to the income levels and everything is slowing down. So the global demand is also slowing down, and that is why the export is also slowing down, if you can see in this way. Also, we do not have proper amount of FTA with most important countries such as the EU and the US. You know the issue with US right now. Now these things look better with the EU right now, but still things are not finalized. Countries such as Vietnam, right, and Bangladesh, which are having duty-free access because of their status as least developing economy. Now our India is not a least developing country, right? Now they are taking the benefit of those duty-free access, and that is why they are also having this huge advantage with reference to cost, because they are not actually liable to pay those amount of duties and charges India has to pay right now, which is increasing by around 9 to 12% of our total charges, right? Next, we are having a fragmented supply chain, unlike China's vertical integrated model, right? Which is a very neat way of organizing the entire supply chain, right? In India, we are having huge amount of logistic costs, and this is actually increasing our costs at the end. Now, also, when we talk about the raw materials, the very high amount of strictness that the EU and the various other countries have with reference to their own quality control orders are actually very difficult for countries like India to follow, right? And this is increasing the cost. Also, with reference to the sustainability pressures, the European Union has their own carbon border adjustment mechanism, which was in the news, which was also covered in the Analyst. So you let me know in the comments what exactly this is. But this is indirectly, if I can tell, this is a carbon tax, that the more amount of pollution that you are causing, the more amount of tax you have to pay if you are exporting to the European Union. Also, if you can see, the environmental impact of the textile is actually very huge. It is amounting for 6 to 8% of the global carbon emissions, 20% of the global water pollution. It is actually the third largest source of water degradation. That means that these are the data that you have to keep in mind. Okay. Now, when we talk about the way forward, it is very simple. We have to focus on the supply chains, because textile sector is actually the second largest employment source. That is why we have to understand the employment opportunities are linked to this sector. So we should be right now not only depending on farm to fiber and all those aspects, we also need to focus on fashion, which is in demand right now. We have to also rationalize the various quality control orders and make it more attuned with India's needs. Next, we have to also focus on the man-made fibers, such as the various synthetic textile that we have, or the technical textile that we have, because that is actually having a very big market apart from the natural textiles also. Also, we have to understand the impact on labor and the domestic policy. For this, we have to have proper amount of workforce housing, as was highlighted in the PM Mitra scheme. So you have to actually see how this will be spanning out. Also, we need to understand that skill development is important. Here we have to convert all the informal laborers into formal workers, right? We need proper amount of policy and market access. For this, we actually have to secure preferential trade agreements with various countries to avoid Trump's tariff. India right now is actually signing in deals with so many other countries separately. So let us have this with reference to textiles too. We also right now are seeing an opportunity in the entire world, which is known as the China Plus One strategy, where the very big companies are actually shifting away from China due to the various issues that we know. And India is actually situated on the brink of this opportunity. If we can give proper amount of benefits to the foreign investors, they can actually increase the FDI in the country. Okay. Next, we have to also continue the support with reference to rebating the various charges, the duties with reference to this particular scheme. Next, at the end of the day, sustainability cannot be, underquoted. We are actually following the mission life that our Prime Minister Modi actually promoted at the Conference of Parties Summit. So this is where we are actually trying to give more emphasis to environment also. And if we are understanding that MSMEs are actually a very big component of this particular industry, we have to give support to them to become sustainable with reference to their growth and with reference to the environment too. If we are talking about environment, we need more investments and more capital subsidies to be given to the MSMEs to actually help them become eco-friendly. Also, we have to develop this recycling infrastructure because a lot of textiles are actually wasted. There are many, rich people in the entire world who actually wear one kind of shirt for only one time. If you are watching my Analyst daily, you will see that I am wearing the same dress every day. Okay, now because I actually believe in mission life and actually I try to promote sustainability. Also, this must be the mentality of everyone. Going forward, we can also promote more homegrown brands such as Kasturi Cotton, Brand India to actually position ourselves on the global level. Now, we have discussed this in great detail. Now it is time for you to actually take some efforts and write some answers in the comments. I will be letting you some amount of the feedback too. So now we'll be moving on to the next one. Mr. Hasnain here has delivered an excellent piece of editorial when we talk about the conservation of the Himalayan ecosystem from the amount of various disasters which are taking place right now. So we are actually looking this from the perspective of disaster management in the Himalayan region. Also, more so, this article is focusing on a technological led paradigm shift that is needed for disaster management topic in the GS3. Now, we have to firstly understand by moving a little bit away from this article and understand right now why the Himalayan regions are actually so much vulnerable. Now, in this data, as you can understand, right, this is the percentage number of days with extreme weather events in 13 Himalayan states and union territories in India. If you can see 2022, 23, 24, 25, the numbers are increasing. That means 2025 till January to March, 2025 is still remaining, right? And of now, we are having 96% of the days where the Himalayan regions are seeing extreme weather events such as extreme rainfall, flooding, landslide, avalanches, GLO waves and so on. Now, if you can understand, this is such a very, dynamic area in the country where these are one of the most youngest regions in the entire country because this is a young fold mountain which is still now tectonically active because the Eurasian plate is still receiving the Indian plate under it, right? And also when we talk about the rock structure and the slopes, these are extremely fragile still, right? Now the earthquakes and the various seismic events which are associated lie from the high to very high risk zones, that is from seismic 4 and 5 zones. That is why it is extremely prone to earthquakes, landslides, land subsidence in recent times, as also as you have seen in the recent events. Now, when we talk about the flash floods, glacial lake outburst floods, cloudburst incidents, this is due to the more increasing amount of monsoonal rainfall. Why? Because of more and more global warming, we are seeing more amount of precipitation due to formation of clouds, and these clouds are actually bursting on the Himalayan region. Also, if you know that due to global warming, the average global temperatures are increasing, and according to IPCC, it is slated to increase by more than 1.5 degrees toward the end of 2050. If that is happening right now, which is evidently happening right now, it is leading to more and more amount of glacial melting. And more of this glacial melting water is coming down the slopes and causing landslides, flash floods and whatnot. Cloudburst incidents I need not mention even. We have seen how in recent times in Himachal Pradesh, there has been a lot of incidents of this. Even in Jammu and Kashmir region, we have seen this sudden massive water discharge causing immense amount of destruction. Also, the avalanches, droughts, forest fires are also all taking place in this region. Avalanches are due to heavy snowfall followed by rapid warming. So that is why the snow becomes very loose and gently comes down the slope. Also, due to this amount of rainfall patterns, you will be surprised to note that areas which were actually receiving high amount of rainfall earlier are now actually suffering from drought in the Himalayan regions. Okay, also this amount of events are also causing wildfires. Due to droughts, the entire region becomes dry, and due to the dryness, especially around this Mussoorie area, you have seen huge amount of forest fires, right? At the end of the day, we cannot ignore directly the causes that we are also doing, right? For example, the dams, the constructions, the tourism sector, the unplanned urbanization, the heavy amount of security construction such as the border road organization and the roads that were constructing in the Himalayan regions, right? The Char Dham Yatra, the tunnels, the hydropower projects, the dams, all of those things are causing significant amount of ecological imbalance. That is why we are seeing so many amount of disasters, right? Now, this is a very interesting PYQ, 2012. It is asking you that when you travel in Himalayas, you will see the following. Now, it is asking you that which of the following can be said to be the evidence for Himalayas being young fold mountains. Now, it is a very interesting question. I want all of your answers in the comments. Now, when we look at the vulnerability of the Himalayas from a different lens, according to a recent report, it has been seen that the vulnerability index of 12 Himalayan states have been more acute in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Also, when we look at Arunachal Pradesh and West Bengal and Sikkim, these states are also seeing huge amount of vulnerability toward disaster related to the Himalayan region, right? And this is actually the ranking. As you can see, Assam is at the highest level, followed by Mizoram, Jammu and Kashmir, Manipur, Meghalaya, West Bengal, Nagaland, and so on. Correct? Now, what we have to understand, the author right now is talking not only from the perspective of that disaster vulnerability, but we are also talking from the perspective of India's current disaster response trends, because you cannot prevent a disaster of these scales, right, from happening. And when it happens, you have to take proactive steps. And right now in India, we have various agencies such as the Indian Army, the Air Force, the Border Road Organization, the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, the Central Reserve Police Forces, the State Disaster Response Force, and the National Disaster Response Force. So when you actually look at various disasters, you see that these forces are extremely activated. They're totally devoted, motivated to rescue, to have various aerial cableways via helicopters. All of the government approach is focused on relief and rescue operations. There are also local government officials and the volunteers who actually give you the last mile response in cases of any disasters, right? So as an example, you can quote this in your answers also, right? Recently, the district collector of Uttarakhand walked 36 hours to a flood site to actually save the various people. This shows the immense amount of integrity, the compassion, the service or the duty towards the nation that the various IS officers and the IPS officers and also you as future bureaucrats need to have. Also, when we talk about the various technology used in these relief operations, we use drones, we use satellite communication and one-way links for in areas where generally we do not have proper drones and the various other services such as 4G, 5G connectivity. Next, we also use Doppler radars, which are sensitive radars, which actually look into the amount of precipitation in the clouds, and based on that, it is trying to give you some early weather forecasting. This year is also focused on the IMD or Indian Meteorological Department nowcasting, the recent amount of weather prediction. Also, with reference to the temporary incident command post, these are the real-time coordination agencies which are working right now. And at the end of the day, we have the army teams, the armed forces teams, which also tries to restore the network and connectivity apart from only the relief operations also. So these things are also important. But you know that the author is suggesting that more here is actually less. So despite so many efforts, still we are seeing lots of casualties of life and livestock. People are losing a significant amount. Even in the recent report, it was said that Himachal Pradesh state GDP has been set back around 1 to 2 years by the recent incidents. So this is where we are understanding that more is actually less right now, and that is why more also needs to be done. Firstly, what are the issues we have to understand? That we are not able to predict when a GLOF will occur, when a landslide will occur, because these are the things which are actually predictable. Also, more so, the local incidents are further more unpredictable. That means we need to have more local weather stations, more local connectivity. Next, Despite mapping and zoning, the risk mapping is inadequate due to high resolution images not being available at all times. Also, the GIS based risk mapping of landslide, glacial lakes and flood zones are not adequate at all. Next, with reference to citizen awareness and compliance, the IMD, the armed forces, everyone time to time sends SMS alerts and various social media alerts on your mobile phones, smartphones, laptops, but citizens are sometimes not even aware of what to do after that, how to react. So we do not have proper training for them. Next, we are also on this reckless developmental pursuit. We are actually constructing in riverbeds, doing slope destabilization for tourism hotels or resorts. We are totally disregarding building codes, norms, only in the name of development, taxes and all those things, right? At the end of the day, the community preparedness is also very weak, right? We do not have proper amount of disaster training at the grassroots level, at the panchayat level, at the school levels and so on. And that is why, if you can understand, this is a very beautiful picture of the Himalayas. We need to conserve it. We need to actually, preserve the natural resources there, and also the peoples and the livelihood that they are having there, along with the natural diversity, the ecosystems. We are not talking about the loss of wildlife also which are happening due to this event, right? So many vulnerable, critically endangered species are actually living in the Himalayan mountains. We have to talk about them also. So that is why we need a future ready system right now. Firstly, we have to actually boost our predictive and preventive tools, such as GIS based risk mapping must be done, and it must be mandatory at the state level and even at the district level by an act of the parliament or the state legislative assembly, right? With reference to slope, soil and flood zone, this mapping must be done properly. Next, the GSI landslide mapping also need to be done based on the scientific parameters of slope angles or slope gradient, because these angles and gradients are extremely crucial during landslide measurements. Also, soil saturation. Next, we also need to boost the NRSC glacial lake monitoring, which is actually a very important authority which is looking into the GLOF. Now we have to understand that we have to boost it to 24/7. Also, we need to use AI powered localized hydrometadata data, and this will be forecasting cloudburst, flash floods, and please do note this for your mains answers too, because these kind of suggestions you will not get anywhere. And lastly, we have to also conduct drone surveillance, because drones can reach places where human beings cannot. Okay. Next, we have to also understand that response enhancers must be in place. That means that dense Doppler radar network must be deployed along the valley, especially at various local levels, because we need to actually scan the various clouds and the various, say, precipitation events for any kind of significant disasters. Also, hyperlocal early warning system such as village level alerts, IoT sirens, Internet of Things sirens, these must be installed. We also need to integrate the satellite communication and 5G emergency network so that the people can actually be connected in cases of disasters. Also, we have to focus on recovery and resilience. At the end of the day, we have to build the slope stabilization and sustainable construction. So slope stabilizers, nets, meshes, all must be installed along the slopes. Next, we also have to enforce the river bank embankments, right, so that we can control those illegal resource or various amount of roads which are being constructed, and also the important amount of illegal sand mining. Next, the seismic code must be adhered to with reference to any building that is being constructed. We should be also having no build zones. And at the end of the day, ecotourism must be promoted. Pilgrim route management must be done so that in any kind of eventualities, this can be looked into at the earliest. These are some important facts regarding the Himalayan and the broader Himalayan region. You can use this to answer in this particular question. Now we'll be moving on to the simplified section. Guys, when the RTI Act was actually bought in 2005, it was actually supposed to become a light that extinguishes all darkness, because right to information is actually a fundamental right. Because when you know about how the government is working and the various mechanisms behind it, you will be understanding the amount of transparency in the daily working of the government. That is why this article is focusing on the online RTI applications that will be touching 1 million in 2025, which is a significant landmark for this particular act. Now, for your aspect of GS2, we have this governance, transparency and accountability as a part of your governance and also as a part of your prelims. That is why we need to look into the basics of RTI in the very beginning. Now the RTI Act here is actually trying to give control of the government to the public. How? By only doing a very simple thing, that is giving information. You know, due to corruption, due to so many other instances, people sometimes do not get to know what is happening. But if you have information, if you actually give the information to the people, you are empowering them, right? So that is why there are some provisions which are important for your basics, such as the section 4, which tells that all records must be catalogued and indexed with reference to government, so that whenever you actually seek information from the government, it will be able to give you at the earliest. Because, you know, according to section 7, there must be a public information officer in all departments, be it the central, state, district, village level. There must be a public information officer under this act to give information or reject within 30 days. So there is a timeline for this, right? Also, person who is not receiving information within 30 days, they must be having the various grievances and they can appeal to the various state information commission, even to the Central Information Commission, which is a statutory body under the RTI Act, right? And even after that, you can go to the High Court and the Supreme Court even. And in cases of very emergency information, that must be given within 48 hours. Okay. Now, section 6 entitles a person to make a request in writing to the central or the state public information officer. So this writing can be literally in writing via letters, and right now even via online by paying only a nominal fees of 10 rupees. Okay. Now there are some exceptions or some things which you cannot seek the information for in the name of national security and defense, right? For example, say if you want to seek any information that the government of India has received in confidence from a foreign government, you will not be given that. Also, if you are actually seeking any commercial, trade secret, intellectual property right, you will not be given that. Also, with reference to any kind of spying incidents or say any kind of armed forces information, you will not be given in the name of national security. And right now in this article, it is talking that the number of RTI applications are only increasing over a period of time, right? And it will be touching 1 million in 2025, and it is very easy. If you want to file one RTI, right, if anyone has done, please let me know in the comments, right? I have also done. It is actually a very interesting experiment to also do on your own, because you need to be an aware citizen at the end of the day. You need to know what the government is doing. If you have any issues whatsoever, you can seek information by only logging into this portal and seek the various information. But there are some challenges also as quoted in this article. For example, there are many people where their OTP is not coming to their email or the phones, right? There are also payment failures in cases of this 10 rupees that you have to pay as information. This this money is being deducted. Sometimes it is not being refunded, or this process is not very seamless. There are various technological glitches, right? For example, say users are reporting that this process is very kind of lagging in cases of servers, or sometimes the portal is very lengthy. Sometimes even your account is deactivated for 6 months and new account creation was halted in 2023, right? Which was actually revised later on, but kind of a shady move. Now, these were the various issues with the online portal. Apart from that, we have various other issues I thought of discussing right now. Firstly, we have extreme amount of bureaucratic control of the information commissions, right? This means that there are so many vacancies which are pending with reference to the SICs and the CICs across the states. We have actually various amounts of CICs which are actually pending with reference to the RTI status. If you can see here, there are so many applications which are pending, right? Also, there are so many ministries which are rejecting requests in the name of national security, right? Specifically using this kind of section 8 of the RTI Act, which is a very controversial one, right? Now, if you also can understand, only 9% information commissions have women. Also, when we talk about the inefficiencies, right, the SICs and the ICs here, Information Commission, have disposed fewer cases, that is under 2,500. There are actually sometimes in some cases no time limits at all, right? Penalties sometimes, if even they have breached the 30-day limit, the penalties are actually very weak. Also, sometimes the government intentionally, it has been reported in various news that government is decreasing the funding and decreasing the powers of the CIC via this particular amendment in 2019. So it is being said that the RTI Act is also being diluted. Okay. Now, these 2019 amendments, which actually changed the status of the Chief Information Commissioner, their salaries, their allowances, and some amount of authorities, it is being said that the authority of the CIC has been diluted, right? Also, the new Data Protection Act of 2023 prioritizes privacy over transparency in various aspects of individuals such as us and also of the various government operations. So this means that maybe right now there can be a new era where the government can actually deny information based on this particular act. So there must be actually proper definition of various words which are being misused right now, such as what do you mean by public interest, what do you mean by personal information. Please do define it either in the proper amount of revised RTI Act or in this particular Digital Data Protection Act, right? So this is where this topic is concluding here. So whatever the issues that we are actually have looked into, these will be the various solutions that we have to address. Now we'll be moving on to the next article. Guys, here we have a new form of renewable energy, which is the geothermal energy pilot scheme, which is ongoing in the country right now. We have seen that we as a country are having so many incentives for the solar energy in the country, wind energy in the country, and so many other forms of energy. So as a part of the infrastructure sector of our GS3, we also have to understand that geothermal energy is actually a very huge amount of potential, mainly for these areas as you can see marked in green. Mainly we have 4 or 5 zones in the entire country where we have the high potential for geothermal energy. Mainly the entire Himalayan region, right? Then we have one central section of our country which is having another section, some section of the coastal areas where we have, and also we cannot ignore the islands, specifically the barren island. So these are the 1, 2, 3 and 4 zones, typically 4 and 5 zones of the geothermal potential in the country. Now, how does this energy work at all? Firstly, we have to understand that our earth is actually very hot, right, inside. And that is why, we can actually use the earth's heat from hot water springs on the surface. Because, just above, we can have some reservoirs, and just above, we can have some hot springs and lakes where the water actually turns hot and it is actually extremely hot, right? Now, this heat is coming from the earth's formation itself, right, and from the various tectonic movements which are always occurring. So this heat, when it comes to the surface of the earth, we can actually tap using various turbine generators to actually generate steam. When we generate steam, we can actually try to turn the turbine and generate electricity. It is as simple as that, right? So it is actually a renewable energy that can be harnessed from hot rocks for heating and cooling, greenhouses, and also for aquaculture. So GSI has mapped the entire hot springs nationwide with surface temperatures ranging from 35 degrees to even 89 degrees Celsius. So this is actually one kind of wonder that we have in the entire world, right? Also, when we talk about the India's geothermal market, it is increasing over a period of time. So that is why we can actually benefit from a lot of investments. So right now, when we are talking about India's potential, we have around 10.6 gigawatts of potential in the country. And when we talk about globally less than 17 gigawatt of geothermal capacity is being actually harnessed. So that is why let us understand that why the government is underdoing all these projects at these key 9 sites. Now, for you guys, you have to actually remember these sites' names also for your prelims examination, right? Now, these are actually in the Himalayan geothermal province, actually covering Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh. Also in the Cambay Graben in Gujarat, correct? So these also you have to focus on, apart from the various abundant oil wells and the Andaman and the Nicobar Islands. So please do remember the states, they can ask you in the prelims examination. So this particular policy on geothermal energy is focusing firstly on research and development by actually creating various artificial reservoirs beneath the soil, which are actually consisting of various hot and dry rocks. So if we can construct reservoirs full of water, the hot and dry rocks will be heating the water. From that we can actually generate energy. Also, we have to create hybrid systems such as a combination of solar and geothermal energy, and also we have to retrofit the various old amount of gas and the oil resources that we had in the various abandoned wells. So we can actually dig more deeper, get those dry and hot rocks, and can generate heat energy, right? Also, there are countries, famous countries such as Iceland, which actually generates a lot of geothermal energy. We are actually trying to have more partnerships with them. This is actually one of the pillars here, such as with Iceland, USA, Indonesia, Kenya. Also, domestically, we are trying to partner with Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Ministry of Mines. Apart from that, we are also trying to promote private investments, particularly through a very important aspect, which is under the ecosystem development, by giving them viable gap funding. Viability gap funding means that if we are trying to dig deep in the soil, we are trying to invest a lot of money in that. We need a lot of machinery, and at the very beginning the private sector may not be interested, so the government will tell, okay, let me do the digging part, let me give you some money so that you can do, and the rest of the thing that you can do on your own by actually installing the turbines and all those technologies the private sector can do. So for some areas, sometimes the government needs to invest more money to just get the thing started. That is actually known as viability gap funding, okay, where the government contributes sometimes more than 50-60% of the project cost. Also, we need to also have a proper amount of domestic supply chain of this, because it is a very new form of renewable energy, and we need to have a regulatory framework for that. At the end of the day, we have to also skill our people. We have to include this in the university curriculum at the various topics of geology, engineering, and we have to also skill the people with reference to the drilling, plant operation and maintenance, right? And that is why we can try to attract some of the various investments in the country. So this was all for this topic. Now we'll be moving on to the next one. Guys, when the US imposed various tariffs on us, India has been agreeing with various amounts of FTAs with EU, with UK and various other countries. Why? Because we cannot be dependent on only one country for most of the trade agreements with the other countries too. That is why we are right now diversing away from the various amounts of the US based concentrated power. That is why we are actually doing the various amount of free trade agreement talks with various countries. Right now, before moving on to the next one, I want to discuss you the very basics of the trade agreements. Now, you know that there are various forms of trade agreements, right? So we have to actually start at preferential trade agreement. Right now, we know that whenever we are talking trade agreements, obviously there are two countries involved or more countries involved. So whenever two countries or more have decided to come together for the first time and sitting on the table and deciding what to do, what to actually allow for trade, on which substances we can have zero import, on which substances we can have 10% import, we are actually trying to decide the modalities. So that is actually the first step of PTA, where we are talking about reducing tariffs initially. This is a basic part, right? Next stage is the FTA, that is a free trade agreement, which you often see, which is actually the most popular and easier form to do too. So this is where you do not have tariff on most goods, right? You have some goods where you have some amount of tariffs, but you try to eliminate tariffs on most goods, because in a free market economy you should not be having too many amount of taxes and charges and so on, right? Next, we have the CEPA or the CECA, right? The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, right? Which is actually combining the FTA. Also, it is combining the services too, because FTA do not cover services in 99% of the cases, right? Apart from that, it moves a bit further by combining services, by combining investment also, and also combining the intellectual property rights, correct? For example, the same which we have with Japan. Next step is going again a bit more friendlier and more liberal approach by becoming a customs union, right? Such as the Eurasian Economic Union that we have seen in this particular article. So they have an FTA plus one common external tariff. That means that if I am part of the Eurasian Economic Union, then all the countries within that union is one single entity. You can actually think of it as a big mega country, where if there are various other countries which we are trying to import and export goods from, we all countries will be having a common tariff against that country, right? Next, it is much more integrated via the form of a common market, where this is actually a customs union plus free movement of even labor and capital, right? The best example is the European single market, which is different from the European Union, because European Union is having, beyond common market, is having common economic policies. For example, they have a common monetary policy, common central bank, right? They have common institutions, even some government institutions. They often have common currencies. If you know that all of the countries use a common currency only, that means that this is the highest amount of economic integration that you can have, right? Now, this is where this actually tells us the hierarchy of trade agreements. It is starting from in this way. Now, when we talk about the big picture, India right now is actually in a very good mood to have negotiations with as many countries as possible, with reference to signing as many FTA deals as possible. Firstly, we are doing with the same with European Union, we are doing with Eurasian Union, we are doing with Chile, with Peru, with even ASEAN, when we are trying to review the FTA that we already have. And here, if you can see, all the dates are also given according to this article. This article is telling that, the government of India did not officially confirm all these particular dates, but this is what will be happening. That these are all the agreements which are lined up. And the biggest thing is that India wants to boost its exports to the tune of $2 trillion by 2030. So any kind of FTA will be important. Also, we have just discussed about the China plus one strategy, where we are trying to diversify away from China, and we are trying to attract the various companies which are doing so. Also, we are trying to have strategic partnerships with Chile, with Eurasia, with European Union, with Peru, with even ASEAN, when we are reviewing the existing FTA. By having our own geopolitical influence also, because we have to diversify away from US, at least till Donald Trump is in office. He is doing nonsense with reference to the various economic policies, right? It does not make so sense. Sometimes he is criticizing India, the next day he is wishing our Prime Minister, right? The next day he is again criticizing India and telling that India is actually promoting a lot of drug trafficking in the entire world. This today only the newspaper is having this news, as you can see. So his economic policies are crazy, and that is why we have to diversify. We have to diversify and have direct contacts with those countries directly. So this is actually giving us an opportunity to even showcase our Make in India products internationally, attract FDI, and also boost our exports. Also, this shows that we are actually autonomous strategically, right? We are trying to diversify export partnerships, right? And we are actually trying to reduce the reliance of only one bloc, because the US and the Western minded countries are almost in the same way only, right? They are like, the US is the boss, and the rest of the Western countries, the Western economic countries, are actually their, kind of, say, bootlickers. So that is why we have to understand that this bloc, this US-led bloc, is not reliable at all right now. Also, we have to integrate on the global value chain, and that is only possible if we can have more amount of FTAs. This global value chain is extremely important if India wants to be present on that. Specifically, if you can understand with Chile and Peru, they actually have resources full of critical minerals, rare earths, which will be extremely important for us to be present on the electronic global value chain. And at the end of the day, the energy and the critical minerals, obviously, as you can understand, is extremely crucial even in the Eurasian region, in the Latin American region. So this is all for this one. Now we'll be moving on to the next one. The armed forces are actually upgrading their radars. As recently as we have seen after the Operation Sindoor, we have to increase the defense expenditure. And that is why, from the perspective of GS3 indigenization of technology, we have to look firstly into how the radars work. Now, you know that radar stands for radio detection and ranging. This is consisting of a particular antenna and obviously a transmitter and a receiver. It uses radio waves to what? To determine the various distances, direction and velocity of various target objects. That can be actually be anything from say cloud to an aeroplane to even fighter jets, satellites, even the various missiles. Okay, so it is composed of various two components such as transmitter and a receiver, correct? And here, when we talk about the air defense radar here, there are various types of the same. For example, we have the surveillance radar, which are actually looking into very wide areas, right? And the main thing is that it has actually a very long range. Next, we have low level light weight radar, which is actually looking at very low altitude substances also. For example, say there are some radars which cannot detect the extremely ground level objects such as drones and so on. So for that, low altitude small aerial targets, we actually have this kind of radars. Next, we have fire control radar for precision tracking and weapon guidance for various guns and missiles. So to track actually some of the movement of the fighter jets, we need to track via the radar and then we need to actually fire, right? Next, we have the air defense fire control radar drone detector, which is a very, very important one, which is a modern kind of radar, which is having so many amount of diversification. As you can see, it can detect the various weapons, the guns, the missiles, the drones, everything, right? And it also detects various amount of low amount of radar signature. We are going to understand in the next slide. And at the end of the day, we have 3D central acquisition or command radars too, which is giving a 3D picture of the various amount of war zones, and it can also give you a higher level of tracking. Right now we have also integrated in our air integrated command center too, and also in the Akash Tir. Now, when we have to understand that in the recent Operation Sindoor, our legacy or the traditional and the existing air defense radar actually struggled a lot. Because Pakistan actually sent, it is a very cowardly nation, and that is why it is sending a lot of small cheap drones at a low altitude level. And the main problem with radars is that radars have a very small area of detection, one single radar. So you need to have a multiple amount of radars or extremely high precise amount of radars. So this small cross section versus the many drones, thousands of drones which are coming in the Indian airspace are very difficult to detect. Also, these drones came at a very low altitude. So with the legacy radars, we do not have that amount of technology. Also, the drones use a tactic known as swarming. That means whenever drones come, they come in thousands of dozens at one time. So the radars find it very difficult to detect one drone, two drones, three drones and so on, right? And at the end of the day, they also have a very low acoustic and visual signature because drones are very small, their surface area is very small. Radars generally can detect very big substances very properly. So this is actually the precise application of drones. Also, you have seen the same in the Russia-Ukraine crisis also, where Ukraine, you name the operation in the comments, used amounts of drones to destroy billions of Russian fighter jets. This was used in Israel-Gaza war also, is being used right now. That is why the army is right now procuring 45 low-level lightweight radars, air defense fire control radar drone detectors, 10 low-level lightweight radars, which are improved versions, right? And they all have a very good amount of radio or radar signature. It is actually a measure of how detectable an object is by a radar, right? This means that if you have a larger RCS, you have larger detectability. So right now, specifically, for example, via this Akash Tir and the various other technologies that we have high amount of RCS, right? So right now, we are trying to upgrade our existing and evolving systems. For example, the Akash Tir, which is a fully automated mobile. If you can see here, this is the Akash Tir here. This is a mobile radar system, integrated all army radars in a single network. We also have the integrated armed control command center, right? This is Indian, Air Force's biggest automated network, which is detecting high level radars and fighter jets. Also, we have the S-400, which is Russian technology, which is an anti-missile system, surface to air missile system. And also we have the Akash missile system, which is an indigenous medium range, surface to air missile system, which will be combined with radars. Apart from that, we also are doing so many counter drone measures, such as, for example, if we are combating drones, firstly we need to have eyes. This has been enabled via sensor and detections. For example, say we are installing technologies such as the triple LR, right, which we have just seen in these low level lightweight radars, right. These are improved, and they have actually tiny RCs at even low kind of altitudes. Next, we have multi-sensor fusion. These are all the technologies that are being used, such as acoustic, radio frequency, and all the other detection technologies that you need. We also are trying to not only use active but passive detectors such as drone and telemetry signals using satellites too. Also, with reference to the brain of the entire operation, we are using Akash Tir and the command center. Correct. Next, with reference to the kill and eliminating of the drones options, we are going with hard kill using guns, soft range surface to air missiles such as Akash and the various other interceptors, soft kill using electronic warfare by doing GPS jamming of the circuit board of the drones. Also, the last defense line is actually rapid fire guns plus radar detection. And at the end of the day, we are also using various non-kinetic measures, such as we are ensuring on a legal basis no flying zones, geofencing, physical barriers. Correct? All of these are actually a very big part of the mission Sudarshan Chakra, which is actually looking into a broad kind of mission, a tri-levered air defense shield, which is actually looking at quick reaction surface to air missile, very short range air defense system, and laser based detection energy weapon. This was recently tested, as you can see, right? Also, after that, we are actually involving Akash Tir for low altitude situational awareness. We are actually trying to upgrade by spending more money, and obviously the integrated air command and control center, and we are actually augmenting with low level radars also this time. Now we'll be moving on to the final article. A very big scheme to promote insurance and to regulate insurance in the country is launched. This is very important for your inclusive growth, for your GS3 and social development. Now, when we talk about Bima Sugam, it is actually an electronic marketplace, just like the open network for digital commerce that we had. This is a very big implementation of the digital public infrastructure, such as the UPI infrastructure, the Aadhaar infrastructure system that we have, right? So this is actually India's first step in building India's digital public sector for insurance. So this will be giving life insurance, term insurance, savings, pension, ULIPs, all on one simple portal. Health insurance for individual, family and wellness. Also general insurance for motor, travel and all of the other things. So this is just, you can understand, this is almost like a policy bazaar website, but from a government perspective, and much more with more features, more neutrality and more transparency. All of the stakeholders such as insurance companies, agents, brokers, banks, aggregators, payment systems, everyone will be present on the one portal. The KYC norms will be done, right? And a variety of payments and the business portals will be there, right? Also, the people can buy, renew and manage their claims, right? Also, the digital storage of various policy documents are done. Minimal charges are being, actually been charged on that. If you can compare with the Policy Bazaar and various other websites, right? They actually charge a little more because they are actually private entities. So whatever will be offered here will be life insurance, health insurance, motor, travel, personal, property and commercial and future ready products, such as new insurance products on trial in the sandbox products, innovative solutions, right? Everything. So this is actually launched by the IRDAI, right? And operated by the Bima Sugam India Federation, a setup organization. Also, the equity holders of this will be all insurers with reference to life and general insurance, and supported by the various insurance council. The both life and general council is extremely important for your prelims information. So guys, this was all. I thank you all for being a very patient audience today. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up, and till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.